...2021, a year of extreme weather. Snow, tornadoes, devastating wildfires, another hyperactive hurricane season. Drought brought lake levels to historic lows. 2021, a year of extremes, is next. Welcome to the AccuWeather special presentation 2021, a year of extremes. It was an amazing year in so many ways, and we want to walk through many of the events and stories that took place over the past 12 months. We'll also hear from our team of meteorologists and experts on what they feel was notable about 2021. We begin with December's devastating tornadoes, the heartbreak, stories of survival, and the months of hard work ahead. AccuWeather's Bill Waddell has a look back at the deadliest December severe weather outbreak on record that tore through towns across Kentucky and Arkansas and 6 other states.
A clash of unusually warm air and a powerful cold front fueled storms that fired off over Little Rock, leading to a rare and deadly December severe weather outbreak.
Man, I've been in a lot of storms, but I've never been nothing like this.
Big tornado up in there. There it is. Massive wedge! Massive wedge!
The first tornadoes formed in Arkansas, slicing through neighborhoods and tearing apart homes. A massive long-track tornado hit a nursing home in Monette, trapping dozens of seniors inside. An army of first responders rushing in to help with rescues in the dark and the rain.
At one point, it gets so hectic it's hard to keep up with, but at the same time, you're just thinking, thank you for sending these people our way.
The line of storms plowed through Mayfield, Kentucky. Businesses collapsed. Homes were leveled.
That's when it just hit. And yeah, you just hear boom, 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 boom. And it was real fast.
Cell phone towers toppled over. Fiber lines were severed. People took to the streets searching for missing loved ones who weren't answering phone calls. Several fire stations were destroyed in the tornado outbreak. Volunteers tell us it was one of the worst nights of their life, helping out their neighbors in the dark after their hometown was torn apart.
So I grew up right there, so that's pretty heartbreaking to see all this, because it's, where I'm from, it's been difficult, but we're gonna make it through.
Families across Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Missouri were left without power and heat for days. Church members that lost their house of worship coming together to give out food, water, and diapers.
I don't care what you look like, how much money you have, or what you've been through. Like, come here, get some food, talk to somebody, get a sense of normalcy, because everybody's in this together.
People more than 130 miles away from the path of the tornadoes finding irreplaceable family photos that blew away.
Oh man, I really would love to get this back to the family. It was really, I think, encouraging and remarkable how many people wanted to help, immediately started looking or tagging.
A small step forward toward rebuilding towns ripped apart by the deadliest December severe weather outbreak in our nation's history. For AccuWeather, I'm Bill Waddell.
Hurricane Ida was the strongest storm to hit the U.S. this season. It left a trail of destruction from Louisiana to the northeastern U.S. Our Kim Luffler has a closer look at the storm's path.
Pressures have actually ticked down just a couple of millibars, and that's definitely concerning.
As Ida made its way closer to the Gulf, our forecasters were concerned it would rapidly strengthen as it passed over a warm patch of water just southeast of Louisiana.
As a result, when we issued our original forecast, we actually thought this would become a major hurricane, even though that was above what some of the computer models were suggesting.
In fact, it took just 3 days for Ida to strengthen from an unnamed tropical wave into a major hurricane, increasing from a Category 2 to a Category 4 storm in its final day over water. Ida made landfall here in Port Fourchon on August 29th as a strong Category 4 hurricane with wind speeds of 150 miles per hour, and it remained a very powerful system as it slowly made its way north through Louisiana.
Ida was still a Category 4 hurricane 3 to 4 hours after it made landfall, which is very unusual. And then it didn't actually transition to a tropical storm until about 24 hours later.
That led to significant wind damage across much of southeastern Louisiana, with home after home damaged or completely destroyed. Millions were left for days or weeks without power. Ida did eventually weaken into a tropical rainstorm as it made its way into the Northeast 4 days after landfall. While it didn't have hurricane-force winds anymore, the wind and rain threat was far from over.
You had a northern piece of energy that dropped into that circulation, causing everything to strengthen.
It led to catastrophic flooding in the region, with the National Weather Service issuing New York City's first ever flash flood emergency, along with dozens of deaths. But rain wasn't the only threat with this system. At least 7 tornadoes also formed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
The ability for these storms to be able to draw moisture in not only off the Gulf of Mexico, but also off the warm waters of the Atlantic, that also enabled this to produce phenomenal rainfall.
A trend Kautlowski says we could continue to see more of.
Most scientists believe that climate change has altered the way these storms, when they move inland, they produce a lot more rainfall over a longer period of time. And so if that's the case, then we are going to have to mitigate this situation.
For AccuWeather, I'm Kim Leffler.
Stay with us. There's much more ahead in this year of extremes. Hurricane Ida's impacts were felt from the Gulf Coast to the northeastern United States. Along the Gulf, homes were completely destroyed. Cars were swept down the roadways. In the Northeast, basement apartments rapidly filled with water, trapping many. First responders also rescued commuters in the subways. AccuWeather founder and CEO Dr. Joel Myers estimates Hurricane Ida caused $95 billion in damage. Our Kim Leffler takes a look at some of the storm's effects.
After Hurricane Ida hit, Grand Isle was almost unrecognizable. 3 months later, homes are being demolished and others are just beginning repairs.
Every once in a while when we sit on the deck and we look out into the Gulf, it's so beautiful. We almost feel normal. Then you turn around and you look and you don't see the camp that used to be there.
Brenda Fungi just got her stairs rebuilt. She's been using a ladder to access her home for months. The island just got running water and electricity back in November.
It kind of was a little slow process from the beginning. But they were working on the roads and they were trying to get down power lines. They kind of had us off the island for a good while.
They saw nearly 12 feet of storm surge here, but inland, wind did the worst damage. Over 3 months after Ida made landfall, and there are still so many homes and businesses with blue tarps on them all throughout southeastern Louisiana. In St. John the Baptist Parish alone, at least 18,000 people have signed up for emergency aid. As Ida moved into the Northeast, thousands in New York and New Jersey were in need of help. After 6 to 8 inches of rain fell in just a few hours, causing catastrophic flooding and trapping many in basements. Multiple tornadoes also left a trail of damage in the region, the strongest an EF3 tornado in Mullica Hill, New Jersey.
About 6,000 people were contacted through the Red Cross, and about 2/3 of them actually had recovery cases open so that we could continue to follow up with them.
But amidst all the destruction, communities are helping each other make it through.
I went ahead and I did a sign. I wanted it to encourage the people to say, we're not going to let this Ida get to us. You're going to be ready for the next hurricane season, and hopefully by the summer we'll get everything. We'll have, a summer of fun. That's what you got to look forward to. You got to look forward to the progress.
Reporting in Louisiana for AccuWeather, I'm Kim Leffler.
Next, AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist John Porter joins us to talk about this year's hurricane season and the punishing damage left in the wake of Ida. Plus, the importance of staying weather aware with the AccuWeather app, especially when tornadoes hit. And later, AccuWeather's Bill Waddell recaps the devastating heat in the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back. Hurricane Ida was one of the more significant storms this season. AccuWeather's chief meteorologist John Porter explains why Ida was so damaging and the importance of staying weather aware.
It'd be hard to think about this year's hurricane season without Ida really sticking out as a major storm that changed lives forever, from the Gulf Coast all the way up into the northeastern part of the United States, and created such significant damage across Louisiana, a state that has been hit so hard time after time after time by hurricanes in the last several seasons. In fact, some people are still cleaning up from previous hurricanes that were impacted significantly by Ida. Not only just the storm surge at the coast, which was truly devastating, the widespread wind damage all the way up into Baton Rouge and New Orleans and other parts of Louisiana, but the heavy rainfall that created so many problems from the Gulf Coast through the Appalachians into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, producing historic flash flooding with over 7 inches of rain in New York City, more than 3 of that coming in just 1 hour at the storm's peak. Truly a historic storm that changed lives forever. Ida was a 4 on AccuWeather's real impact scale for hurricanes, both at the Gulf Coast and all the way into the Northeast, because the significant risk to life and property all the way into the Northeast with the heavy rainfall and the flash flooding, which we knew would be historic in some places. That was a way that we were able to help message about the severity of this storm and how people should prepare well inland. We're able to do the same thing with Fred, Tropical Rainstorm Fred, which was a 1 on AccuWeather's real impact scale for hurricanes, produced catastrophic flooding in the mountains of North Carolina. We're able to highlight that risk with our unique hurricane tool. While here at AccuWeather, we're always talking about the importance of staying weather aware and using the AccuWeather app to stay ahead of weather conditions in your community. But tornadoes that occur at night are a special risk because it's dark outside. You don't necessarily have as much awareness of what's happening. And also, people are not necessarily as aware of what's occurring from a weather perspective.
The Pacific Northwest was the target of extreme weather this summer. AccuWeather's Bill Waddell was in the Northwest U.S. back in June as a record-busting heat wave baked the region.
It was a summer many in the Pacific Northwest won't forget.
I don't think I ever remember it being this hot.
Wildfires burning, crops baking in the sun, and roads buckling in extreme heat. Many homes and apartments in Portland and Seattle did not have air conditioning, making the June heat wave unbearable for some families.
I can't find any fans or AC units online or in stores.
Portland, Oregon hit 116 degrees. Dozens of people were rushed to hospitals, some with hyperthermia or heat stroke, others from shock, trying to cool off in rivers and lakes.
There's a big change between 113 degrees outside and the water temperature can be as low as 50, 55 degrees. And that water shock, that cold shock, that can be dangerous to even the strongest swimmer.
Volunteers hit the streets with bottled water and ice pops, helping people experiencing homelessness.
I can't be outside for 15 minutes. Imagine, being out there all week.
Show everyone love and some kind of empathy. The smallest gesture goes a very long way.
Farther north in Seattle, temperatures topped out at 108 degrees, another all-time high. Many hotels were booked solid, with local families trying to escape the heat.
No one really preps for 100 plus in Seattle.
They're all the old studio apartments that we can afford. There's not been AC in them. They're all red brick buildings, nothing to block the heat from coming in, and the heat doesn't escape all night.
Even with several days of advance notice, hundreds of deaths across the Northwest and Canada have been linked to the heat dome.
What really sets heat waves apart is not so much what happens during the day, but what happens at night. Temperatures at night stayed well in the 70s and 80s. So if you didn't have air conditioning, your house just got hotter and hotter and hotter.
Experts say the extreme heat in a normally temperate region was considered virtually impossible without climate change factored in.
We know that heat waves associated with climate change, where there's at least a partial detection and attribution with climate change, are already killing people. And so climate change is causing deaths today. that can be prevented.
Nobody believed me when I was describing to the planners, like, we are going to get a heat wave much like Chicago did in 95. We just need to be really prepared, or we're going to see a lot of people die because we're so woefully underprepared in the region.
Professor Vivek Shandes at Portland State University says he tried warning leaders years ago that the Northwest was vulnerable. He says families in communities with more concrete and pavement and less trees endured the worst heat.
I measured 99 degrees Fahrenheit in one neighborhood and 124 degrees in another neighborhood.
Dr. Shandes says investments and greater outreach are needed because more extreme heat waves could be on the horizon.
We're just not ready for this kind of a acute, intense, and 3-day event that is going to break records and turns out breaks climate models too.
For AccuWeather, I'm Bill Waddell.
In November, a rare tornado outbreak occurred on Long Island. Our partners at WABC give us the details.
I'm meteorologist Jeff Smith from WABC TV in New York for AccuWeather. This year featured some extreme weather events here in the tri-state area, and one of the most bizarre was a tornado outbreak over Long Island in the middle of November. The morning of Saturday, November 13th was absolutely beautiful as temperatures soared into the 60s by midday, but a strong cold front was approaching from the west. This sparked a line of afternoon thunderstorms in the increasingly unstable air over New Jersey, and we knew that these were no ordinary storms when we started getting reports of hail covering the ground. After they crossed New York City, the thunderstorms started to rotate in multiple locations and ended up spawning six tornadoes in the course of about an hour on Long Island. That was the island's largest tornado outbreak on record, and the only time that Long Island has ever recorded tornadoes during the month of November. A truly extraordinary event.
This year, drought and heat created the right conditions for wildfires to rage in the West. Though 2021 did not see nearly as many acres burned as in 2020, the season was still very active. AccuWeather's Lincoln Riddle looks back at the wildfire season.
Nearly 7 million acres of land across the United States were burned in wildfires this year, many of those in the West.
The long-term, multi-year, very serious drought, that coupled with our expectation for a hot summer once again across the West, we were concerned about those two factors conspiring to produce a very serious wildfire risk, and that in fact occurred.
In California, more than 3 million acres and more than 3,600 structures burned in this year's wildfires. Consuming 963,000 acres, the Dixie Fire wreaked havoc as the largest wildfire of the year and California's second largest wildfire in history.
It was a really tough experience for so many families and even business owners out in California. There were days or weeks on end when they were dealing with wildfire evacuation warnings. They were keeping a close eye on the forecast, trying to figure out which direction the wind was going to blow.
One of the hardest hit communities in the Dixie Fire was Greenville, California.
Once it hit this neighborhood, it was like a cyclone just, had gone through here. And the sky was like all lit up orange, and you could hear everything popping and cracking. You could hear propane tanks exploding.
You just feel for the people out there. I was talking to a lot of people beforehand. They were very stressed because of the fire. They're like, it seems like every year now we're having to evacuate. A lot of the people that were living in Greenville had previously lived in Paradise or other towns that were affected by fires.
In total, 6 California wildfires grew to more than 100,000 acres each, including the Monument and Caldor fires, both exceeding 200,000 acres. Elsewhere in the West, other substantial wildfires raged, such as the Bootleg Fire, which burned roughly 413,000 acres in Oregon. Though an active wildfire season, it follows an even more active year, with more than 10 million acres burned in 2020, the second highest number of acres burned in the modern era. For AccuWeather, I'm Lincoln Riddle.
Next, we'll look at the deep freeze in Texas that left millions without heat.
Several days in advance, it became clear that there was going to be a significant cold wave in Texas, preceded by snow and ice, and certainly giving people the warning, help prepare for this. However, it was the infrastructure that really couldn't handle the strength of this cold.
deadly rain events threatened many towns and cities in the U.S. this year. Jillian Angeline takes a look at the catastrophic floods that occurred across the country.
Late March, 7 people were killed in flash flooding in Nashville and nearby counties. It was the city's second highest two-day rainfall on record. May 14th, Lake Charles, Louisiana. In a town already reeling from major damage from 2 hurricanes and a dangerous deep freeze, about 12 to 15 inches of rain fell in a 12-hour period.
I'm still alive, and I thank God for it.
We're noticing more extreme rainfall happening all over the world.
Fast forward to mid-August. Tropical rainstorm Fred spawned swiftwater rescues August 17th in western North Carolina. A thick blanket of mud covered the town of Canton once the historic floodwaters receded.
Never. I've never seen any kind of flooding like I saw last night. Never. It freaked me out bad.
In nearby Crusoe, the flooding and resulting massive landslide of debris killed 6 and irrevocably changed the path of the East Fork Pigeon River and the landscape of the small town. AccuWeather meteorologists say the surrounding mountains forced Fred's tropical moisture to rise, which increased the intensity of the rains and the forceful currents. I was here in western North Carolina in the days after the August flood. There was very limited access to the town of Crusoe, one of the hardest hit areas. These debris piles are examples of the ongoing recovery process.
If I were to say that it's a 10-step process, I'd say we're probably on about step 3.5 or 4.
August 21st, catastrophic flooding killed 20 here in Waverly, Tennessee, west of Nashville. In the aftermath, I met John Curtis, one of the owners of the Cash Saver grocery store, the only grocery store in town. 4 months later, the store is restocked, and they're excited to open for business this month.
Our families have worked hard, our staff has worked hard, this community has come out, volunteers have worked hard.
After landfall on the Gulf Coast, Hurricane Ida was re-energized by a trough of low pressure across the Northeast September 1st. Ida packed a punch, killing more than 50 people in the Northeast alone. The dangerous conditions caused the National Weather Service New York office to issue its first ever flash flood emergency alert.
As the circulation from Ida approached the Northeast, there was a northern piece of energy that dropped into it, and that's why the rain picked up.
As recovery continues across the nation, flood survivors say unity in their community keeps them going.
We have really come together.
For AccuWeather, I'm Jillian Angeline.
Hurricanes and wildfires are often the costliest weather disasters each year. In 2021, it was a deep freeze in the south that left millions in the dark. AccuWeather's Bill Waddell was in Austin, Texas, where the push is on to make sure the power grid is ready for this winter.
There was little love from Mother Nature on Valentine's Day across much of the South, except for snow lovers.
I'd rather have this than to have the heat. I love it.
Texas hit with a deep freeze and snow reaching all the way to the Gulf Coast. Louisiana left coated in ice. The water system in Mississippi's capital city freezing, leaving faucets dry for weeks.
One of my pipes on the water, it just popped.
We're shopping around for a little heater. It's very cold.
Several days in advance, it became clear that we were looking at a record cold snap coming into Texas, preceded by snow and ice, and that certainly helped people prepare. But unfortunately, the strength of the cold was just too much for the infrastructure.
Texas was hit hardest. At one point, the entire Lone Star State was under a winter storm warning. Power plants and wind turbines went offline. Millions of families lost power for days, with no way to heat their homes.
I had a neighbor that I had seen in passing, and she had a small infant with her, and she was burning cardboard boxes in our apartment parking garage trying to keep her baby warm.
Health officials say 210 people died in the winter storm across Texas from hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning, and car crashes.
Everything that needed to be done was done to fix the power grid in Texas.
Leaders fast-tracked new laws requiring Texas power plants and natural gas facilities to be weatherized.
So that's definitely going to put us in a better position, for this winter.
Luke Metzger, the executive director of Environment Texas, says renewable energy sources took the brunt of the blame in February. Federal reports later found that fossil fuel generators played a bigger role in the blackout.
According to the federal government, the overwhelmingly, it was natural gases failures that contributed to the blackouts. Wind energy actually produced more electricity that week of the blackout than nuclear power did. It's clean power that won't be producing, greenhouse gases that are making extreme weather more likely, which in turn will make our grid more vulnerable.
AccuWeather estimates the damage and economic impact from the February storm likely topped $155 billion, the most expensive winter storm to ever hit the U.S. For AccuWeather, I'm Bill Waddell.
The lack of active weather on the West Coast also made headlines this year. Here's our AccuWeather partners in California.
Hi, everybody. At AccuWeather, I'm meteorologist Dallas Raines from ABC 7 here in Los Angeles. Our big weather story this year has been the lack of weather. The drought continues over the area, so we really need rain. The La Nina is very strong. So all of you guys and gals back there, please keep your fingers crossed, keep those prayers coming, because we need rain and snow here in California.
I'm meteorologist Madeline Evans from KFSN in Fresno, California for AccuWeather. Not only this year, but for the past 3 years, our main weather story for the Central Valley has been the drought. The 2021 water year, which stretches from October to September, was the second driest year we have seen in state history. The driest year on record was 1924. The most current drought monitor has the entire state of California experiencing some sort of drought conditions, with the entire Central Valley under an exceptional drought. Even with rain in the future, it'll most likely take several wet years to completely break free of this current drought. But for now, we are looking at the second year in a row with La Nina conditions, which continues to strengthen in the Pacific Ocean.
Our ABC partners from around the country shared with us their most notable weather events this year.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg, WABC TV New York for AccuWeather, and headlining our extreme weather events of 2021, the remnants of Hurricane Ida. Now, we retire the names of devastating tropical systems. We should really retire the description remnants. It really doesn't cut it when describing the impacts of what Ida did to our area. It was unprecedented and an incredible resume. The first flash flood emergencies for New York City and northeast New Jersey. Had over 3 inches of rain in 1 hour in New York City, and that was a record that we broke from a rainfall rate a week before from Tropical Storm Henri, when we got nearly 2 inches of rain in an hour. It's happening over and over again. The New York City infrastructure is only able to handle about 1.5 inches in an hour. When we exceeded that, and that's why we had rivers on roadways and water going into basement apartments and unfortunately fatalities across the area. All that water poured into our streams and creeks and rivers, and of course the Passaic River Basin, where we had river flood levels that were really challenging levels we haven't seen since Hurricane Floyd back in 1999. The remnants of Ida also interacted with a front, and so because of its natural spin, we had severe weather and an EF3 tornado in Mullica Hills, New Jersey, southern New Jersey. It's only the 5th ever EF3 tornado in New Jersey, and it just leveled some homes in that area. Ida was part of just a drenching summer, one of the wettest summers on record, and it's really made us recalibrate what we can expect in terms of weather extremes around the tri-state area.
Henri was one of many major events to impact the tri-state area during the summer of 2021. Even its origin was a bit unique. Henri started off as a disturbance east of Bermuda, and it basically made a loop around the island and then took a hard turn north after being picked up by the jet stream. It intensified to a Category 1 hurricane as it moved over the warm Gulf Stream, and it made landfall as a tropical storm on Rhode Island with 60-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. Henri produced widespread rainfall with a bullseye of the heaviest rain over the boroughs and New Jersey. Some of the highest totals range between 8 to 9 inches.
I'm Adam Joseph from 6ABC in Philadelphia for AccuWeather. This year, our National Weather Service office issued a record 52 tornado warnings, with 25 of those being confirmed tornadoes. We had 2 tornado outbreaks. Each produced an EF3 and 2 EF2s, extremely rare for our region. The EF3 near Bensalem on July 29th was the first EF3 in Pennsylvania since 2004, and the EF3 near Mullica Hill on September 1st was the first EF3 in New Jersey since 1990. In addition, there have been 5 EF3 tornadoes ever reported in New Jersey.
Extreme weather events, storms, droughts, floods are all around us. Scientists just said that there was more climate pollution last year than ever before. We've had more damaging storms. We've had record-breaking damage associated with those storms. It's really we're at a point now where we need to see our leaders step up, take bold action, and get us on the path to a much healthier and better future where we can all thrive.
That was Amanda Leland, Executive Director of the Environmental Defense Fund, sharing what she feels is the relationship between extreme weather events and our changing climate. We talked to Amanda and many other experts for our new AccuWeather series, Our Changing World. AccuWeather's Monica Danielle explains more.
Just brutally cold temperatures. Those exposed skin surfaces really can only last a couple of minutes out here before frostbite will set in.
The greatest cold snap in over 30 years in Texas and Oklahoma in February killed hundreds. Millions were left without power for days in homes not insulated to deal with extreme cold, which caused burst pipes and frustration with leaders.
People is homeless. People have died from this, and it's just like, oh, well, add it to the list.
In June, record heat in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia killed hundreds. Roads buckled amid 116-degree heat in Portland. Temperatures soared to 121 degrees in British Columbia, breaking Canada's record. This summer was the hottest on record in the U.S., tied with the Dust Bowl summer of 1936, according to NOAA.
No one really preps for 100 plus in Seattle.
In August, back-to-back hurricanes Henri and Ida slammed the Northeast, breaking records and causing deadly flooding. Ida broke Henri's single-hour rainfall record in Central Park, gave Newark its wettest day ever, and killed at least 50 people in the region.
You can see sheet metal flying through the air. Oh, that roof is coming.
Before moving northeast, Ida became the second most damaging and intense hurricane to make landfall in Louisiana, behind Hurricane Katrina in 2005. From flooding to drought, freezing cold to record-breaking highs, these extreme weather events can be linked to climate change.
The problem is that the impacts are coming faster and the progress is coming slower.
In late October, diplomats from nearly 200 countries struck a major agreement aimed at intensifying efforts to fight climate change while gathered at the United Nations Global Summit in Glasgow, known as COP26.
There's real urgency, but there's also real hope.
For AccuWeather, I'm Monica Danielle.
I had the opportunity to talk to Bernadette Woods-Plackey, the Chief Meteorologist and Climate Matters Director at Climate Central. We talked about whether climate change was a factor in this year's weather events.
One of the things I think that stands out from this year is just how many there have been that have a climate connection. And we can get into a couple of those. But when you look at the order of magnitude of these extreme events and how frequently they're coming, it's really stressing our systems. It's stressing people's health and livelihoods all the way down through economies. And so a couple that, we can have a conversation about this, but living in New Jersey, one of the ones that stands out to me the most is Ida. It was local, it was personal. The amount of rain that it produced, even well forecast rain, just overwhelmed our systems, and way too many people died from that event. So that's one that I will probably hold the most dear as we wrap up 2021.
What's our confidence level in being able to directly tie climate change to a specific weather event, or maybe natural variability on the other side of arguments that some people make?
Well, the science has advanced tremendously. We know that climate change is changing our weather. Now, different types of weather have different confidence levels. Almost any time you see extreme heat or record-breaking heat, there is an influence from climate change. In the science, that's overwhelmingly on that side. Also, extreme heavy rain events. That has another really strong influence of climate change almost every time that we dive into these events. Now, it does start to step back with confidence as we go through a few other kinds of events. For example, hurricanes. The data record for hurricanes changed when we put satellites up into the air. So it's a shorter period of record. But what we do know when it comes to climate change and hurricanes or tropical systems in general is that we have more heat in our oceans. Our oceans are sucking up 90% of the heat that comes into our climate system. And so they are fueling more intense, more rapidly intensifying storms. And when they do come on shore, they're producing more heavy rain and a higher storm surge from sea level rise. Another one where the tide drops a little bit from extreme heat, but still pretty strong confidence, is setting the stage for wildfires. Now, it doesn't mean climate change caused the wildfires, but we know it is increasing the risk of an area becoming more ripe for these fires to just explode and become huge and become incredibly damaging. Now, when it comes down to tornadoes, it gets a little more complicated. So earlier research, because there's a couple of key ingredients that go into tornadoes, as your viewers know so well. You need that warm, moist air. And we know that is increasing with climate change. But to get that spin in the atmosphere, there's a lot of things that have to come together for that to happen. And it's still earlier research on how our weather patterns are going to set up as we warm our atmosphere. So it's a little bit less in the confidence level, but really early and interesting research.
Bernadette encourages us all in the new year to be mindful and intentional about our impact on the earth and to use our voice to inspire others to do the same.
Hi, I'm Travis Herzog, Chief Meteorologist at ABC 13 in Houston for AccuWeather. Normally, when we get a dusting of snow here in southeast Texas, it's a joyful occasion. But the winter storm of February 2021 will be remembered for the amount of human suffering it inflicted on the Texas population. Never before in recorded history have all 254 counties of Texas been under a winter storm warning at the same time. It's forever changed the way many of us view winter and also how we prepare for it.
Welcome back. Now here's a look at some of the events our team of expert meteorologists and field reporters covered.
We've seen quite the reports here of freezing rain and icy spots over the last 24 hours and more to come.
We're looking at a big red zone here with snow-covered roads, and the snow-covered roads will be buried in snow through the passes where we do expect to see 2 to 3 feet of snow.
Buckle up. The weekend isn't looking any better.
Well, that's right, Bernie. It's certainly very cold here in the Windy City, and that's why signs like this one sit outside of nearly every building.
Officially, it's the first mega fire of the season.
The bootleg fire continues to burn hundreds of thousands of acres of land. Bill, crews are dealing with a fuel shortage as well.
Yeah, Adam, that's right. Add on top of that, winds that are picking up at this hour, unfortunately.
Well, Michelle, we've talked about the damaging wind, the storm surge, the rain. Well, there's much more rain and unfortunately some severe weather to come.
Yeah, and before we get to Ida's current status, we want to check in with AccuWeather's Kim Leffler. Kim, what are you seeing out there?
So an entire roof has blown off here. This is in the French Quarter.
What you're looking at behind me here, this is a parking lot. None of this water was here, but as you can see now, it is quite a different story.
Well, we are starting to see the really strong hurricane force winds here in LaPlace, Louisiana.
We're getting that wind tunnel there. And it's tough to stay on your feet. I'm turning my back now. Hopefully you can hear me. Big tornado up in there. Huge winds due north.
We want to start by sending well wishes to everyone affected by this devastating severe weather event.
We have live coverage as we're following the devastation left here behind with the severe weather in portions of the southeast and Midwest.
It's a hectic situation right now. You might be able to see the emergency responders coming in, Sheriff's Department.
This is just one example of what we're seeing. As you can see, that the strength of these tornadic winds stacked these trucks on top of each other.
Every single person that I've spoken to, that's not an exaggeration, every single one who has been here says that the images and the videos do not do the devastation justice here.
The weather we've experienced this year was truly exceptional. The AccuWeather Network, AccuWeather.com, and our app will continue to keep you updated on what you need to know so you can plan and be prepared Thank you for joining us for 2021, a year of extremes. For everyone here at AccuWeather, I'm Geoff Cornish. Hey AccuWeather viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and you can also click on any of the videos here to stay up to date on the latest weather news. Thanks for watching.